Hey guys, today we have Graham Tuttle on the podcast. He's also known as the Barefoot Sprinter. Graham has come out to Super Training Gym and he's been visiting with Mark. He's also on Mark Bell's Power Project. You can listen to him there. He's been doing a lot of videos with Mark and Nsima about running, but he's also been helping me fix my feet. He's been helping me pull the sled with no shoes on and different things like that to get my feet moving. Because if we can get my feet moving, then we can fix the ankles, we can fix the calves, we can fix the knees, we can fix the hips, we can fix the low back, we can fix the shoulder, right? And Graham has different programs for all these things that just help like fix up the body. So we're going to get into a great conversation with the Barefoot Sprinter. We also talked to him a lot about how he creates his vision for TikTok because it is its own art. And we also got into a lot of stuff about more like philosophy, you know, the philosophy of pain and how we think about ourselves and how we need to sort of love ourselves more in order to get more out of what we're actually doing in the gym. So this is a deep one, but I also think it's a good one and it's a great listen. So get ready for the Barefoot Sprinter.
Flying out of Sacramento, California!
Woo! What you gonna do?
Better. Stronger.
Son of a bitch.
Faster.
Oh yeah!
All right, so today we have a special treat. We don't normally have a lot of guests on here, but today we are because it's important, and I think it's a lot of great information I've already learned from this guy. We have Graham Tuttle, the Barefoot Sprinter. Is that your Instagram?
I guess Batman is, Bruce Wayne has Batman, Clark Kent has Superman, so I'll be the Barefoot Sprinter. It's my pseudonym.
Barefoot Sprinter, which has a lot of views on TikTok and Instagram. I've seen a couple of your videos, like you had one, I think 10 or 11 million.
Yeah, well, so that's an interesting thing when it comes to social media. Like there's this component of, because first and foremost, it has to be valuable, right? It has to be something that could be entertaining, could be a value of any number of things that people find valuable, even if it's just like a meme that people want to stay involved, like the trend or something like that, which is not inherently valuable in and of itself other than the cohesive, connective like measure of a society. But it's not just enough to be valuable. It also has to be wrapped in something that looks good or that's attractive or that's entertaining. As you know from being a documentary and filmmaker, it's like, yeah, what's the message here? There's lots of stuff that's worth telling people about, but it's not the same as just say, okay, here's this thing I found that's valuable, but it also has to be wrapped up in a way like using the language of the community in a way that they can understand it, in a way that advances their thought, but gives them a little bit of a adjustment on, builds on some level of knowledge, but then creates some new thing they didn't know. Because if, like, for example, you make a documentary that water is wet, it's like, oh, yeah, we all know that, right? There's nothing new, and there's nothing that says that your framework for how you're perceiving this thing isn't accurate, and that's why you have this problem. So I present with the problem. So that kind of taking that, like, what makes effective writing, what makes effective speaking, it's like, okay, what makes effective content from a social media perspective? And as you know this, it's like, you know, what does it look like to be this is value, this is entertaining, and this is also something that is you've got wrong, basically.
Yeah, so before we even talk about running, that's like one thing that I really identified with you early on. I know I was joking the other day, we had David Weck in here, and you're like directing this TikTok video basically, and you were like so passionate and so into it, and you're like, now you throw this down, and I think I even made a joke and like you didn't even acknowledge it, you just kept going, right? Like, because you're very into it, and I think that, and I made a joke, everybody's a director, but you actually are. Like, I haven't seen, and maybe I see this a little bit with Ben Patrick also, but it's like you guys are creating something that is its own work of art, and I know that might sound crazy, to say like a TikTok video is a work of art, but when you actually break it down and look at it and look how much time actually goes into making a TikTok video, a lot of times it's hours and hours and hours. Sometimes it's days.
For 15 seconds, yeah.
Yeah. What is your process like?
So one of the things I find is that, well, the reason I get so hands-on with this is as you know, like, so this is what's interesting if you look at like the actual production of a movie, which is really a glorified like people doing something in front of a camera, and then you can go, there's like the script writer, there's the casting director, there's the producer, there's the videographer, there's the actors, there's the editor, there's the sound effect. Like all these people come together and they have a shared vision, and so one of the things is like if you have a cohesive unit of people that can see that shared vision, then they can think as a unit. But when you get some of these smaller units in a sense, and I'm working with just like people I've never met before in a sense, so like it's some other content creator or coach, and I go and I meet them. I don't really know them that well, but it's like I'm going to bring an idea. But it's part of it is like I'll get hit. So first is like, what's the value? Why is this important? What's the message you're trying to say here? And then take like the big promise, break that apart into the 2 to 3 to 4 pieces of valuable like sub headlines. And then you think about how does this play out? Like what's the visual here? How can I make this interesting? And you think about this from the perspective of something always has to be happening because we live in the attention economy, right? So it's like in some settings, there's an interesting long form like podcast and documentaries. You can get people to sit and do that. But even then, there's an art to that as well. Like Joe Rogan talks about this. It's like there's an art to speaking and having conversations that, you flow through these things and you walk people through the highs and the lows of energetic, longer series. But something like TikTok where there's a lot of people who are really smart, much smarter than me, much better coaches, much more knowledgeable. But can you bring that in a way that you get 9 seconds tops, maybe even half a second, where if someone's scrolling and it's not just like, is this valuable? Is this valuable compared to the infinite amount of possibilities that could be out there? Like the next thing I scroll up 1 second, like I'm bored, and you go on, and it's like, it's a tough audience out there. So part of that is saying like you have to really go and say, what's the action here? Do I lose attention? Is this getting the message apart? Can I take this sentence? Now can I break this apart into a more impactful? Can I create instability with the language I'm using? So the words matter. And so if I were to do it myself, I would sit down and say, what's the value? What's the big promise here? What's the thing that maybe that people haven't thought about or they need to be reminded of? Because people need to be reminded more than they need to be educated in most senses. And then you say, what are the 3 pieces I would use to like, if I could only do a Twitter summary of this thing, why is this important to you? The 1, 2, 3 pieces. What's something they say, hey, if I were thinking in their head, they would want to. The real secret to virality is to create something that then someone says, I saw this thing the other day and it said, you shouldn't wear shoes all the time because it does. And if they can't do that, they're going to feel dumb and they're not going to say it. But if I can say, oh, because it lets your feet spread out or, it lets you feel the ground or it keeps you rooted like a tree or something like that. Say, oh, how can I do this with some level of like direct language that they can speak and then use that? And then how can I paint that in a way that creates action, that creates drama, it creates some level of character development? Also, what you're saying is that the person that watched it can actually summarize it in like a sentence, and that's really important. So they say, what's this post about? And I'm like, well, it's about running with no shoes because you need to let your toes spread out. And then somebody goes, oh, okay, I can further investigate that now. Yeah. Rather than what's this TikTok about? Well, it's kind of about running, right? Like it's very specific. Yeah. And a person can actually pinpoint, what the post was about and what it meant. Yeah. And most of your posts are obviously on running, Barefoot Sprinter. How did this whole thing start from the running to becoming a TikTok, sensation to like, how did that all happen? So really, and this kind of goes back to this whole process of, I was listening to a discussion today talking about the difference between professional and amateur. And amateur is like amo, I think is the root of the word, but it's the one to love. The ones like the amateur documentaries or filmmakers or coaches, whatever, the ones that just do it because they love it. Like a hobby comes to this, like it's a job you can't get fired from. And so the professionals are the ones that show up and do it for money in a sense. And so, some of the best people in the world are amateurs because they just do it because it's either personally interesting or they love it. So in many ways, I went through school. I just showed up and, I didn't miss school. I just had decent grades. I was not unintelligent. But I really kind of struggled to get traction with anything at school because it was so like you sit down and you pay attention and you regurgitate. And I had so many questions that, that type of like curiosity doesn't get encouraged much in school. So I found a lot of joy and happiness in movement and sports, being outside and playing. I think most young boys do. And then that became a corollary to like, okay, I go to college, like what am I going to do? And so I bounced around like medical school, physical therapy school, because I'm like, I like working with people, the body's interesting, and I want to help people and do that stuff, but I don't know what that looks like. And, I was thinking about jobs. I was thinking most people pick jobs based off of the 3 matrices. Is it consistent? Like, is it secure? Will it likely be there? Does it make a lot of money? And does it sound good? Like, is it reputable? So even just like I'm in pre-med. It's like, oh, that sounds good. Like, how many kids are in pre-med that never do it? Yeah. Because doctors, you always need doctors. They make a lot of money, and there's always going to be, it sounds good to say. It's highly reputation. So You know, in that sense, wasn't until I was really struggling to land with something that I kind of got encouraged from the career services to go to exercise sports science. And so I started down this path of I'll do physical therapy because, again, that makes money, it's consistent, it's repeatable.
Yeah.
And then I went and did some shadowing, and I'm like, this is so boring. The people only show up because insurance is paying for it. It always reminds me of that Marshawn Lynch. I'm just here so I don't get fined. It's like they're just here because insurance is paying for it. They don't really care. And then physical therapists have a little playbook. They got taught an anatomical view of the body, which is, we'll give you a pain pill, and then we'll give you a shot. We'll do some manual stuff, maybe some needling, and then we'll do a procedure. And they don't think much outside of that because they only have so many sessions. And there are great physical therapists and chiros out there.
And when people are really into it, it works really well, right?
Exactly.
So let's not discount at all,
well,
right?
No, I think it's one of those things where it's easy to blame them, the practitioner, but really they're strangled by the insurance companies in a sense. If I go and see you've got a knee surgery, okay, well your ACL, that means the insurance company is allotted 24 sessions for that, and it's like, okay, and they're actually not allowed to touch on other things and work on other things outside of that because it's like the insurance doesn't cover that.
I had a double hip replacement surgery, pretty serious.
Mm-hmm.
My scars were like patches of leather on the side of my butt. And I said to my doctor, like, don't I need physical therapy? He's like, oh, you'll heal up fine. And I'm like, well, listen, I want physical therapy.
Yeah.
So then I had to fight for it with the doctor. And then once the doctor approved it, I had to fight with the insurance company so that they would pay for it. And then they wouldn't pay for all of it. So I did it anyway because I knew it would be good for me.
Yep.
And actually, what I did, I think, actually is the reason I can squat and deadlift and move today is I had a friend of mine who was a physical therapist who basically would just rub on the scars until it hurt so bad that I couldn't do it anymore. And he's like light touch at first, but then but every week we did that and we worked it to the point where like my scars, they're not stiff anymore at all, and they would still be like that tough rock, if I didn't do that. And it's just crazy that no one thought that would be good for me to move after I had double hip replacement surgery.
There's layers to that, right? Because it takes a perspective of the body, which is like the body. I mean, there's a whole outdated thing where there's anatomical structures that are stacked in this compressive model that basically like a Roman, Roman temple where there's like a pillar, the roof is on top of pillars which are into the ground. But in reality, the body flows and works in this huge network of fascial tissue, which is the connective tissue, the bones, ligaments, tendons, synovial fluid. It's like it's all the stuff, and the body is constantly remodeling and growing and based off of the stresses you get. You get a major injury like a surgery, then you get actual scars and sutures and hardened tissue. It's like that just gets hardened, or you can make that mobile and flexible. And so, but ultimately, it's like you look at that. The doctors have an agreement with the insurance companies based off what blood tests they'll do, which blows my mind because that's one of those things where the average male doesn't get testosterone testing done until their 30s, 40s, until they have symptoms. And I remember I was 23, 24 at the time, maybe 25. I went to physical because it was the first time I've been in years. I'm like, hey, I'd like to get some blood work done. He's like, he's like, okay, sure, we'll do the regular stuff. I'm like, well, isn't testosterone included in that? And he goes, well, no, we don't like to test unless there's symptoms. And I'm like, how are you going to know that something's off if you don't test until after I'm tired and weak? It's like, because how do you know my testosterone wasn't normally lower or higher than it is? And it blows my mind.
And why do you want to get tired or weak?
Exactly.
You want to avoid that. So it's like
we're not going to measure. You go and get your oil change, and it said, how are my tires looking? I don't know. We don't usually measure tire pressure until after the tire's flat. It's like, wait, what? You didn't just check that to make sure everything's good? It's crazy. But they have this agreement, and it's kind of under the table about what they're going to charge for, what they're going to assign. And so they have it all there. And so, when they say, well, the doctors say, well, we don't really want to pay for this stuff. We're going to encourage less physical therapy. We're going to encourage less of these approaches. We're going to push these things more. It's because it's a higher leverage. People forget they're all businesses. And then unfortunately, there's a great quote. It's, you can't depend on a man to understand that, which is salary depends on him not understanding.
Yeah.
And they go through these schools where they don't even realize the water they're swimming in is funded by these large insurance companies and medical product companies and these just, large corporations that have been around. And so by that point, it becomes an entire enterprise where these people who have the best of intentions end up in a system where they're the externality of third, fourth, fifth order effects that basically are boiled down to, does this make someone money or not?
Yeah.
And then you as the individual user gets the brunt end of that where it's like, actually, you're fucked because it's just not going to
it is really crazy. Our entire media, mainstream media that people actually listen to is about 75 to 80% funded by the pharmaceutical industry.
Yep.
You can see it. It's evidence when you watch Fox News or CNN. every other ad or MSNBC, they're all for pharmaceutical stuff, right?
And then you think about not just the pharmaceutical companies, but everything that's connected. The insurance companies.
Everything's connected
The medical product companies. The plastic companies that make the stuff, the transportation, the pins, like all of these
and
things.
People actually believe the health information given out on the news.
Yeah.
When you're like, well, how can you believe that when every medical journal is written by Big Pharma and every ad that we see is from Big Pharma and they're paying for everything? Like, I would like to think we could still trust it, but you just can't.
You can't be, at the very least, you owe it to yourself as a consumer and individual to be skeptical, at least to ask questions about, like, let me take this with a grain of salt. And
yes.
Buyer beware in some sense.
Yeah, I don't want anybody to think like you should be, I don't believe anything they say, but like look into it.
Exactly. And it's no different than you see someone as a broader thing, look at the supplement industry where someone goes and says, oh, I've got this new, let's just, for example, like Mind Bullet is a great example. Yeah. It's one of those things where, like, I tried it and it was one that, like, if I hear you say, like, you should try this thing. Oh, who made it? Oh, I made it. It's like the hard part.
Yeah, sure.
The hard part, though, is that, like, you can't just dismiss it out of hand because you would expect every time you see a doctor, it's, oh, well, this is a problem going out there. And that's where we made this thing to fix it. And it's like, well, you would expect the person who has the most knowledge and most experience with it to also have the solution. You would expect that. But it's also important to ask the question, like, well, how much does this influence a thing if they don't at least talk about other stuff? I happen to have tried Mind Bullet on my own after, it's like a few days after he gave it, and I was sitting down on Monday morning, I tried it, and then like an hour later, I'm like, what in the world is this stuff? It was amazing. And so but it was one of those that you need to be able to do it and test yourself, but maintain some level of objectivity because, then you start, that's why I think the idea of, like, ideally what peer-reviewed is supposed to be, which it's not really, but the crowdsourcing the reviews is like you're getting – this is what Amazon did better than anybody else. You could go to Walmart and you see a bunch of brands. Like we did the big box thing where there's a bunch of brands, a bunch of options, but what Amazon did that was so unique is the rating system. When I can go in, I don't look primarily at price. I don't look primarily – you factor in price, you factor in the brand, but primarily it's which one has the most reviews. Mm-hmm. And then that's where you get the vote of the true democracy in some sense, which is what gets tainted if they get like fake people that are on there making fake reviews.
Some of the reviews are amazing on Amazon. They're hilarious.
I know. But that's one of those, when you go and look at that and say, okay, what do the people say? And so when you can go and see that, for example, let's say you were wearing Google glasses and you could walk in, or Amazon, or like not Amazon, Walmart, you could go in and you just look at, there's 3 different options instead of saying, well, which one looks fancier, which one has the right stuff, which one has the the fanciest brand. It's like, well, no, underneath there's the labels, like 1,500 5-star reviews. Like that's true democracy in some sense, which is, a powerful thing. All that to be said is it goes back to this idea of like, as a consumer, it is really, really important for you to think about, okay, what are the incentives for this person? Which ultimately was the decision I made. It was like, okay, when people are thinking about this, like, I don't really want to do this. I want to be on the proactive end of helping people. And so, I go through school and I'm at Chapel Hill, UNC, and then I end up graduating early because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And the only thing at that point, I'd given up on physical therapy. And I was like, okay, maybe a nurse or something like that. Because I wouldn't let go of this idea of like, I need something that's repeatable, that makes money, that, that's consistent. And so I was like, oh, I'll do a nurse practitioner or something like that. And at that time, I was waiting to get into school. I had no chance of getting in because I hadn't done any shadowing. And I applied for the internship at the gym, and then he didn't at the gym at school because that's where I worked. The only thing I knew what I loved to do was be at the gym, work out at the gym, train at the gym, work there. And so he said, well, I don't think this is the best fit for you, but there's this other place. And that's when I walked into what was at the time D1 in Raleigh, it was D1 Raleigh, North Carolina, as a athletic training facility. And so I started working with athletes. I'm like, this is cool because I'd grown up, I had really weak eyes. I'd worn glasses since I was 2. So one of the things you don't get when you wear glasses is the peripheral vision. So you don't get this development of yourself, kinesthetic awareness of where I am in the environment. So I was bigger than I could have played football. I was like a big enough, like 6'2", 200 something pounds. Well, I put on some weight in college, but I got up to about 215, and I just didn't have the awareness because you can't. I tried playing football when I was younger, but you can't play football in glasses because when you put your helmet on, it pulls them off. Yeah. And then if you get the hook glasses you put on afterwards, you can't see out the side. I would run the backfield and get smacked. It wasn't pretty. So I'd kind of like I started lifting because that was the first thing. I was like, I can change my body. I can get stronger because I'd run track and cross country. It's like the only teams that don't make cuts, and I was even the alternate on that. So I was just kind of like a little bit too big for this, a little bit too small for that, a little bit too uncoordinated for these things. And so I ended up just kind of bumbling around until I figured out, oh, you can lift. And I got like this like scratches all my like the itches. And so I started doing the bodybuilding and powerlifting, and then I was like, oh my gosh, these guys are training. You can train to be faster. You can train to jump and run and be athletic. And I'm like, that's amazing. So I got really into that. But, after a few years of being a bodybuilder and powerlifter, I was like, my body isn't working as fluidly as I wanted to. And so then I started to get hurt.
Yeah.
I had a really bad ankle sprain that led to all kinds of things like turf toe, plantar fasciitis, shin splints, Achilles tendonitis, patellar tendonitis was horrible, hip strains, SI joint dysfunction, low back thrown out, shoulder. I had 11 shoulder dislocations. And so I kind of was like trying to just,
11?
11. It was over a span of 4 years. And the biggest thing we can talk about,
ridiculous.
like the confidence of that, because that's the big thing is you lose confidence in your body after a big injury. But what I ended up realizing is that, I took the lens of, for a long time, I was like, you try and approach things, well, I'm just weak here, or I just need to get stronger here. And you just like, you kind of work around it. So a lot of people, let's say your knees hurt, for example. Instead of stopping or thinking about something that's different, well, eventually they quit, but they'll just think, well, maybe I'll try a sumo deadlift. Maybe I'll try a box squat. And they kind of like back themselves into a corner where it's like, this thing hurts, I'm going to do a little bit less. And then that thing hurts, I'm going to do a little bit less. And you back into where like all you're doing are some box squats and some, assisted bench press and some machines. And it's like you get so stiff and resilient and stiff and unable to move that you end up losing your capacity. And so that's when I started to flip around. The one thing that was beneficial was I always worked in a gym that had a physical therapy unit attached to it. So I talked to them, kind of see how they did things. And so just being in that environment, also with the fact that I took like 7 anatomy and 9 physiology classes in college, because exercise sports science had one set, the physical therapy prereqs had one set, the nursing school had one set. Like, there's like 3 different sets of 3 different classes I had to take for all these different things I applied to. So I had a decent map of the body, and it kind of stuck with me. And so I started just thinking to back engineer some stuff. I'm like, okay, well, that really, like trying to fix the shoulders, that led me to look at the feet and realize that like that ankle sprain I'd had years ago, it never quite healed. It was always a little bit stiff. My big toe wouldn't move. And then that kind of like shifted my knees and my hips and created all these problems up the chain, including a functional leg length discrepancy. So one leg was actually one hip was sitting shorter than the other. And then I was like, so of course I had no idea what I was doing. So I kind of bumble in and backwards, figure this stuff out, change the shoes, change the running form, and ended up getting injured almost every step of the way. It's like, that's one thing people don't, talk about enough is like, I'm injured, I hurt myself, so I have this compensation. I do this thing to fix it. You're going to get hurt doing that. It's like 3 steps forward, 1 step back, always, because you're loading new tissue with old patterns. And so, but it's just, if you just keep going, you let that settle out and figure out the new thing. You break through one roadblock and you run to the next one. Break that, run to the next one. So it's just a process, but I just didn't stop. And then I was always working with clients as a coach along the way, so I kind of got in the practice of having to explain it to people, having to write things down. I got in the habit of, like, when I would go to research, I would write that down into an article or like make it a podcast or a resource, so because that's how I would learn it. And so I'd write it and then try to explain it to somebody else. And so over years and years of like being the amateur, the one that just in love with the hobby of like learning how to move and how to like fix these things, I would just go and learn it and then try to explain it and relay that to people I was working with, to myself, and then eventually turn to social media. And you get better and better kind of putting these things in words and helping them. Like as an amateur, like here's the thing is, I have no reputation to protect. I'm not a PhD. I'm not a medical. I'm not a professional. I'm not anything. I'm just a coach.
In a way, there's a lot of freedom in that.
Absolutely.
Because I know that, like, even talking about nutrition, like, I'm not a doctor. I'm not nothing. I can say something, and as long as I have good intentions, I'm fine with saying it, and I know that it's like, hey, this worked for me. I'm not held down by the Hippocratic Oath to, or anything weird like that,
And that's one of those things that it's like, I've gotten much better prefacing is that the things that I hold strong beliefs, but I like to think of it as a strong belief loosely held in a sense. So like I'm pushing with an open hand. Like when I find something that I perceive to be a step in the right direction, I'm going to push that as hard as I can until something new shows. And so as someone that I don't have any methods or procedures that are licensed under my name, I don't have this, the whatever, like the thing I'm grassed in or any of the surgeries. Like let's say if, this is how do they know that a certain surgery isn't effective? Like, how do they know?
Yeah. They have to do it, right?
Yeah. And then eventually, when you're the guy, like you've cut open 20, 30 people and you give them long enough time, does it work? It's like, well, it's not that effective, but hey, this is my thing. And so then you get, if you like, then it's your reputation, it's your name.
Mark always says, always be careful of the word work. Like, does it work?
Exactly.
Like, what does that even really mean, right? Like, does it,
exactly.
Hey, I took this, does it work? It's like, That's such a loose, weird term.
If by work it didn't kill me, then sure. You know, it's like, and so that's one of those things where most surgeries, and this is the thing I think is fascinating. Most surgeries are just they are shown over longer term, I guess, review. To just not be any better than a sham surgery, and so especially things like meniscotomies and labral surgeries and all this stuff. It's like people do it because they perceive some level of external support. Like, okay, I'm gonna get surgery. It's gonna fix it. It's like, no, but sometimes the surgery just injures you so bad that you have forced to go and do the physical therapy, which is just basically exercise on a very limited capacity, and take it seriously because you have literally no other option. They just cut you open. And so, if that's fine as a placebo that gets people moving, then maybe that works. But for most people, it's like, if you just stuck with it and let your body remodel and reform, that cartilage would heal. And that's where you look at all kinds of dietary interventions, all kinds of little things. But that was the whole point. So because I had no profession to pursue, it's like I could do some baseline certifications, like the bare minimum personal training certification, the bare minimum nutrition certification. And okay, I've got some. I wouldn't jump through a hoop, but I've spent, and this is not an exaggeration, thousands and thousands of hours listening to podcasts. I don't listen to music. I don't watch TV. I just listen to podcasts. And I don't read books as much because it's it's kind of a sunk time. If I can get a podcast or an audiobook to listen to. It
moves faster. Yeah.
I listen at 2.5x speed because I'm let's go through this. I'm the only person.
And that's why he talks so fast.
Yeah.
I felt good with the 1.25 speed. That's really impressive.
No, some of them, it's if they both speak English and speak it loudly and clearly, then I can go 2.5x speed and do that. But if it's something I'm really in the weeds, maybe 1.5x speed, I'll slow it down. But I'm the only one that can't listen to 1.5x speed. I'm or I have to go back and oh, buddy, all right, let's slow down here.
Yeah, you and Paul Saladino's like that. I always think I have it on 2x speed. I'm like, nope, he just talks that fast.
Yeah. Well, part of it for me is I realize there's something I want to say. And I could just say the very simple thing. But because I am a quote-unquote amateur in that sense, I don't expect anybody to believe me in my merit. Therefore, it's important for me to be able to set the setting for why I have the context for how I've thought about this, and also to give at least some service to the fact that I understand there's alternative perspectives.
Obviously, you started running. You became, you became good at it. And then you at what point did you get the confidence to be okay, now I can teach this?
So, the running part is interesting because I was never good at running. I just had run a lot. So I ran track and cross country starting in 7th grade. So I did that for 7 years. And then it wasn't until a senior year that I got really into the 4x400 because I started lifting. And I'm because otherwise you're the long distance cross country kid. You do the 2 mile on the track. You're the slow skinny kids they put out the very end. It's the worst. If you ever been to a track meet, then have you ever been a big track meet, one of those states?
I was on the track team, but just because there was chicks on it. And
okay,
I was a thrower. Yep. But I wasn't really any good. It was just I was big and fat, so they let me throw a shot put and a discus. But I've been to those big state track meets. And
so how long you get there at 6 or 7.
It's all day long. Yeah.
And then the 4x8 is the first thing, and then they go. And at the very end of a 12 to 14-hour day, let's let the skinny kids go run 8 miles or run 8 laps. And it's the most miserable thing where you're
sitting around all day and then you got to run 8 miles.
Oh, my God. And it's just being that because it gets so spread out and it's just so quiet. And they're finally just get off the track because then they can do the 4x4 and then the bang. And then it's everyone loves that. But
have you been to a powerlifting meet? Sometimes you deadlift at 10 p.m. If it's a big meet.
I know
it's
people
brutal.
It's crazy, the long days. So it was the point I ran and I would go and I just was decent at suffering. So I rode crew in college. And so running was always kind of a fallback thing. Never something I loved to do. It was just my friends did it and somewhat social. And it gave me literally a hamster wheel. I saw this video or TikTok of a dog last night. It was sitting in front of this self-powered treadmill. It's screaming, whimpering. It's let me go, let me. The owner harnesses the dog in and the dog just takes off. And it's yep, I know what you mean. It's you just need something to go and burn off energy, literally. Yeah. So that was kind of what it was. And so then when I went and lifted, it wasn't, I always wanted to play sports. Ultimately, that was always what I wanted to do. Ultimate football, ultimate frisbee, basketball, soccer, football, you name it. It was you give me a sport. I'm yes. And so running was very much I kind of stopped doing it. But then I started doing some powerlifting and getting a little bit of chub and around the midsection. I was okay, I want to get back and feel a little more athletic. And so, I was maybe I should start running again and start to do some of that stuff. And that's when you go from, I'd always just worn the big Asics. And so the big thick heeled shoes and it's kind of you'd be surprised, but my coach never talked about running for him. And I always kind of felt faster when I was on the balls of my feet, but it was no one ever encourages it, no one ever talks about it. And so I was like, I guess it's just whatever. So you just kind of grind through it.
What does the coach talk about if they don't talk about form?
Really, so we actually, the Weddington High School that where I went is actually a powerhouse now. Rick Spencer's the coach there. Like they go and they do, like I think they won a state multiple years in a row. Like I would say we were the first year. So at that point, I don't know, you realize coaches are just teachers, right? It's like at the time you're in high school, like this is like adults are a whole different thing. Like they just know everything. And it's like actually they're just a teacher that is just a few years out of college.
It's a teacher that wanted to make some extra money and they coached the team or whatever. Right?
He happened to, but he was one of those guys that like this is the 100-mile marathon.
He was legit.
He would just go and like. I think there's a little bit of that when people want to go do that much like endurance stuff. Or they were trying to get away from their life or something. Maybe they love it. Maybe it's just they're really introverted and it's their time to like have a reason to like actually I got to go train. It's like, so he would go and do that. But he was a legitimate runner. So I don't know because at that point like I was a teenager. I had my head up my ass almost all the time.
Well, they probably don't coach much, right? They probably just say go run, and that's all you do at practice, right?
Exactly.
There's not like running along with you saying, okay, now trot this way or
absolutely not. And it was one of those things where like it says, all right, go, and then this is the workout, 8 miles, and so like. You spend it maybe at the end, you do some of this stuff. But like if you're on track, they might talk about it.
It is much different than football because like football, you have the whole team out on the field and you can be like, you do this, you go here, or you have them doing different drills or doing whatever, right? Yeah. But like when you run, you got to be on your own for a couple, for like an hour by yourself.
I personally think that most running training is really ineffective and misses the point. But we can talk about that later if you want. But the point is that like. I just was familiar with it. So, like, I never had this blocking. So I'm not a runner. I can't run. It's like, I've been a runner. I've done it. Like, I've done 15, 16-mile runs just in practice. And it's like, okay, so it was something I could go back to. So, but the point is when I went back to it, I had this newfound, I was weighed 40, 50 pounds more, just mostly muscle. And I was kind of like, well, I think I need to be on the balls of my feet and I'm going to wear these shoes. And so I went back and immediately got shin splints immediately because I was like, you go run 2 miles on concrete without knowing what you're trying to do. And then you switch to your forefoot. And it's like, that's not good. And that took months to fix. And then, I went from like the Reeboks to like these really thin paper shoes. And that gave me turf toe because like my toes weren't ready to bend for it. So it was like, it's never been like that. I felt I was great at running, but I was always familiar with it. So I didn't have the mental block of like, oh yeah, you're not a runner. You're not able to do it. So then I kind of had to back in it all. Like, how do I fix my feet? Well, I can't even move my toes. How do I get my toes to move? Okay. Then I started to like figure that piece out. And then it was what exercises are powerful or effective for getting the fascia to remodel. So the connective tissue and the Achilles tendon and the plantar fascia. How does that work? And so then it was like, okay, well that's one step. And then you start to get a little bit better and it snowballs. And then you're like, actually, I'm getting faster. Like this is the fastest I've ever been. And you start to look at some of these pieces around. Realizing that actually running is really just jumping from foot to foot, and that's actually supported by the strength of your tissues, not necessarily your conditioning. Then it's like, okay, well, you start to ask these questions, and like this is one of the things that I've found to be a useful tool. So I'll make a program, right? And so you go into whenever you start. So, example, let's just say you're making a documentary, right? We always have to have constraints on a creativity. If you're going to go, because if you don't, creativity without constraints is chaos. Because like I'm going to make a documentary. How long is it going to be? What's it going to be about? Who's going to be?
You can't be like as long as it ends up because then it's like it might be 5 hours and nobody will watch it.
Okay, where do you want this documentary to go? Well, a film festival or a YouTube or a short story or a TikTok. Okay, so those all have different constraints on both the lens, like the portrait or landscape, whether it's going to be like the
has a lot of different constraints.
Exactly. So you set constraints
content-wise and different things.
But sometimes you get those constraints are made off of assumptions in some sense. Like sometimes there's rules that are fixed, as like YouTube is always going to be best in landscape as opposed to portrait, and TikTok's always going to be portrait. And so like, but sometimes it's like you go in and all of a sudden it's like, wait, actually the rules change. And so what you go in though is like, most people go in with a set of constraints that are based off of beliefs that they have about themselves or the world or environment. Those are basically assumptions that they made based off of inaccurate or incomplete knowledge. Because almost everything, there's nothing that's complete knowledge. It's just when sometimes we set the rules for things that say, okay, the soccer field's always going to be this dimension by this dimension, right? So we go in and we train and we do this stuff. But because most people go in with the first set of constraints and then they just live in that paradigm, they never question it. And then sometimes it's useful to think, well, what if this weren't true? What if, the phone turned into a circle? What if there's 3D? What if, like there was no longer time or whatever it is, right? You think, would I go back and do this the same way? And so I can think, I could go in with the knowledge I've learned with a new set of constraints. I remove those temporarily just to play around with this idea. And so for me, I never had the mental block of like, this is, I'm not a runner. And then never had the idea of like, this is how running's supposed to be. So therefore I was able to say, well, what if this is not the best way to do conditioning? What if this is not the best way to do running? So then I was just able to kind of like try something different, which I think as an inventor, as someone that thinks about this, you probably do this automatically without thinking about it. But like going back to old ideas that were made under old constraints and then applying new arbitrary constraints to them can open up a whole new level of, well, does it have to be this long? Could I say in this many words? Could I make it twice as long?
Well, I'm kind of thinking about that right now, actually, like as a filmmaker. I think the game has changed, and I'm trying to explain to people I'm working with, listen, we need to raise the money, make a movie, and then like see if like I'm not really interested in going to Netflix anymore because Netflix is now made it very clear that they're very political. And which side they land on, and it's very slanted. It's very biased. Like anything that you see on Netflix can be very biased. Anything you see on Amazon's owned by Jeff Bezos, that's also going to be very biased. How do you get something that's like free and open and I don't even know anymore?
Yeah.
Because you go to YouTube and they're very biased, right? So if you have any opinions that differ from what the world tells you, for example, the next film that I'm trying to make is about meat.
Yeah.
Now all three of those places, they want meat off your plate. Bill Gates wants meat off of our plates, and so it's like, how do I make a movie about meat and actually get an audience to hear it? Well, maybe I post it in 600 pieces on Twitter. Like you don't know. Like you're saying, we might have to change these constraints because of things going on. And so it's interesting.
And that's one of those things where if you thought about potentially, what if I took a section of this and made it TikTok? In a sense, like this is part one, part two.
Yeah,
in a
that's
sense.
what I'm saying, stuff like that.
Because then let's say some part of it is like, that forces you a different constraint. But like that, so this is the thing is that's why that level of creativity is what keeps things fresh. And so if you go back and say, like just even as a thought exercise, like what if we could make this a 15-minute documentary on TikTok? And say, okay, there's 15 pieces. And so then someone ends up catching, whether you get a part 7 or 8, they catch part 9. Like, oh, wow, this is amazing. Wait, this is part 9. Let me go back and watch part 1. And they could sit there and watch and scroll.
Yeah.
Like, that's a whole different thing. And so that's where I look at. So I built this program to develop the feet and basically fix the feet, ankle, lower leg, and really like tie in everything from the pelvic floor and below. And part of it was like, I just kind of, you overthink it. You have all these different things about why you shouldn't do it, why it's going to be too much or this, that. And it's like, okay, well, actually, just popped in like, well, just make an email series you send out to people for 28 days with the training attached. And I was like, oh, okay, because I can write it. If you told me I have to write a 40,000 word book, that's overwhelming. But if you said just write 28 emails and just see however long each one is, and then you can go back and rewrite it, and then it ends up being a 40,000 word book, like, oh. You don't think about it like that. I'm just writing one little
attacking
piece.
things like a little bit at a time.
And then I'm thinking like, okay, well, this is great, but what if I could take each of these articles and put it into a 30-second or less TikTok? And that it's just a whole different challenge. Because then, on one hand, you could think, well, that's pointless. What's the value in that? It's like, well, if I can say it in less words, then I might as well.
The time constraint is the most amazing tool of creativity.
Yeah.
So if you take something and you try to make it 30 seconds, you have to do what we call in the business, kill your darlings or killing your babies, right?
Yep. Kill the sacred cows.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's hard. It's like you're like, oh man, I came up with that line and that was so funny. Yeah. But it doesn't fit the story, so it's got to go.
Yeah.
And I do that. I help Mark edit a lot of his TikToks now. It's like, how can we make these more efficient? Mark has the ability, and I'm sure you do too. Like once you get your account, you can do like 3-minute TikToks or long. You can do longer TikToks, but 3 minutes is kind of too long.
I've never made one.
I don't think you should. I think they should stay at the 60. I think the 60's perfect, unless maybe you're playing a part of a movie or something like that. But otherwise, like use the time constraint to your advantage. You're going to get more views. Our attention span is so short nowadays.
Which is interesting. Because if you think about that, it's easy to go and say, like, so for example, you can look and say, Netflix and Amazon and YouTube are all biased. Potentially, it could be a dog chasing his own tail or the dog wagging the tail in a sense, because like you could say the companies start with this paradigm and it funnels down to the content they show, or you can say that they're trying to cater to what they perceive to be as an extremely they love to put up neutral stuff, but the only things people watch are this and that, and it's like then they go blame the algorithm. It's like That's the hard part because people want that.
Yeah, it is really hard because we do find that like nuance doesn't sell in any capacity, right? So it's like when even just somebody sees the Barefoot Sprinter, right there, that's like a trigger enough for some people to go, wait, he runs with no shoes on? Like it's enough to be extreme. Like it's enough to get people to click on it. Like whereas maybe if you were like just the sprinter, people are like, well, who cares? There's a lot of people sprint. You know what I mean? Like
the fast guy.
It's like it's not the best example, but basically, by creating the Barefoot Sprinter, you're definitely breaking out of Graham Tuttle because you're telling like what it is. This is what this is, you know?
So that's one thought. Just to finish the other one is like, it's easy to say that, people have a short-term attention span, but I remember very clearly when you'd go and you listen to you watch a movie, what movie do you want to watch? Well, let's look at the trailer. We've been doing this forever, which is they take a 3-hour movie and they put it into a 2-minute trailer, a 30-second trailer.
And then does it look good?
Exactly. Yeah. Or even more realistically, when you walk through Blockbuster, if anybody remembers Blockbuster, and you go, what name sounds cool? What font is this? I'm judging a book by its cover. We've been doing that for forever.
You know what's kind of amazing is when I made Bigger, Stronger, Faster, I had so many people come up to me and said, I was walking through Blockbuster and I saw that like Hulk Hogan on this. And I just went boom, like it just brought me back to my childhood. And I go, what the hell is this? And I picked it up and I looked at it and I rented it and I loved it. You know, it was like that's sort of how it got attention in Blockbuster was through literally the box, which made me proud because I designed the cover of it.
It's iconic. I love to see it. It's great.
Yeah.
So like that's a big part of it, which is like, okay, we're still doing that. So now potentially the game has changed and people are like, well, it doesn't work the way it used to. It's like they don't care about the whole thing. It's like, yeah, but maybe the whole thing is kind of boring. And so then it's like, what can you do to make that better? So I just think it's a useful thing to put into that. But that's the other part of this. You go the Barefoot Sprinter, right? So the reason I changed the name to that was more because really what you get is there's, and maybe this is my belief, and this is probably a rough overgeneralization, but there's two categories of things. There's paradigm breakers and there's commodities. So a commodity is basically something that says the message that we had prior about how to fix or do or operate in a certain capacity was correct. We're just going to compete on the price or the ease of access. We're going to change some vector that allows it to be more readily accessible, right? So we don't need new gas. We're just going to make the gas price go down 1 cent. And so that's where people commit on goods in a sense, like cotton, wheat, gas, copper, whatever it is. Then there's paradigm breakers, which says, like, for example, the electric car could be a paradigm breaker because it shifts something like actually that thing that you thought worked, it doesn't work in the way you did. There's a leverage on knowledge that I have some new capacity. I know something that you don't, so that's allowed me to see the world in a different perspective, and now I have this thing. And so that's where you go, and you can't go too much because there's a brilliant people out there, and like a lot of the eccentric creators, Buckminster Fuller, like some of these guys out there that like Marshall McLuhan. They're like Thomas Edison, like some of these real smart guys that like have changed things. You look at, they may have one or two things like the light bulb takes off, but you'll look at their invention book and they've got hundreds, if not thousands, of other things that are crazy, and you go like, this is amazing. It was a bridge too far for most people. So that's why like it is a painstakingly slow travel, like the way that ideas and let's say people and societies move. But it's basically, can you inch it just 1 degree? Yeah. And if you can go in and break the paradigm of saying, like for me, my capacity is the message in the sense that your feet can go from like broken, beat up, injured, and very stiff and like incapable to being very resilient and strong. And that's just a matter of not surgeries, not pills. Not
Did it come out of necessity for you? Because I find a lot of invention and innovation comes out of like, well, I was running with my shoes on and my feet killed, or something like anything like that, or was it more just like a progression?
So in some sense, I was lucky because I still live over near Chapel Hill, so the university, and so most public universities have
what made you go barefoot? I guess I should say.
They had a large turf field, and so like this massive like football field sized turf field that was open to the public, and so I had the opportunity to go there, but it was one of those things where like I had already been into I went from like the typical Asics to the typical basketball shoes, then to like Reebok Nanos, and to Nike Frees, and this is back before they got ridiculous. But then it was like, okay, I'll go from that to Merrells, and then they got too tight, and then it was Vivos, and then I kind of got to the point like the Vibram 5-finger that let the toes, and I got more and more comfortable with my feet out, and so I would go wear regular shoes, and my feet just felt cramped, and so I was already at the point where like my feet do not feel good in these things. I still had the running shoes. I still had the other things, but it was just I kind of was acutely aware that like my feet don't feel good in that. And I was lifting and doing all kinds of stuff and playing around. And then I would go out to the turf. And so a lot of this happened with the pandemic where I spent more time outside running again, be on this turf field. And then, I'm already in the minimalist shoes, just jumping around. I'm like, okay, well, if I could do this. And then it just, it felt good to be able to run. And it kind of I backed into it in the sense of like, it just felt really good. And I was like, I've never been able to do this before. But the more I did it, the better I felt. Because this is after kind of years of working on my feet, trying to get them strong. Because it's quicker for me to coach people because I have a codified process of like this, do this, then this, and this. These are the goals that we're trying to do. But I was like inching my way along step by step over a few years to figure out like, okay, how do I get my feet and body underneath me again? And then it was along with that came the change in shoes, change in capacity. And then finally it was one of those where I started doing it more and more. And I felt faster without shoes.
Yeah. And
then one of the guys has been a long-term mentor, the Keegan Smith for me. It was like, hey, that thing you do, that barefoot? Like, that's crazy. That would break my feet if I tried to do that. I was like, huh. And then he's like, yeah, the barefoot sprinter. You ever thought about that? And then like kind of sit around for a while. And it was like, actually, that's exactly what I'm trying to get people to understand is that your body can heal and be recovered. And like no different than you and your scar tissue with the hips. Is like, I have a belief that my body is strong and capable and will heal with the right support and training. So I'm going to pursue that. And so then but otherwise the other message is like, no, your body's actually weak. It's broken. It's not made right. Genetics are wrong and you're screwed. And so it just is what it is. Sucks to suck.
It's kind of what we're told. You know? Like I showed you that video. It was from Cheddar, and they were like, "Why the foot is a bad design?" And you're like, "I don't agree with that."
Yeah, and again, that's
it's like that's what we're told, kind of, right? We're told like your feet suck, so you're done.
So, and this is one of those things where like this is my belief, but when you look at that, we have two options to say that our body is broken. It's just we're just a random genetic selection that kind of popped in the next piece, or our body is designed in a specific way, and you don't have to put too much word emphasis into the word design, but you can think of like the fact that the natural selection, or that
it's evolved that way,
or even just a few people ago, meaning like a few hundred years ago, we were still the level like if the body didn't work, you're gonna either not get you're not gonna get a mate, you're not gonna survive, whatever. Like that was just a few people ago. So we're not that far moved from evolution's capacity to select for positive things.
Yeah, and how long have we even had shoes?
That's the thing is there's billions of people right now who don't have shoes.
Exactly.
That's what people don't. We had this paradigm which like if I don't have shoes. Like, what shoes
all
should I
the
wear?
people without shoes are the people that, when you look at like the GOTA people and people telling you like how your feet and your ankles and your knees should all line up and everything, they're going to like tribes that don't have shoes. And then when you see the people with shoes, I don't know if you saw on Mark's Instagram, he posted like this mangled foot. And that's like somebody's x-ray from just being in a shoe for too many years. It's like, and I feel like I have those same problems with my feet.
It is tough because so this is one of the things I've kind of come to the conclusion, and again, this is my belief based off of my non-professional experience, but so my program in the first 5 classes, I've had over 700 people sign up for it. And so like the process is
amazing.
Thank you. But what I tell people, they go, I have this. It's metatarsal, I've got turf toe, Morton's aromas, I've got hammer toe, I've got Liz Frank sprains or fractures, I've got like you name it, what they have, bunions. It's like almost every single thing I've seen, other than the fact of like a bilateral crush, which is where people like jump out of a window and smash their feet open, like that's a whole different thing. But I've still had those to fix those. But what you see is that people, there's all these semantic names for things that go wrong with the feet, like broken toes that end up turning into this. But the feet and the hands are not unlike anything else. I mean, the feet and the hands are not unlike one another in terms of the tissue that they have. So when you look at it and say, okay, we have the capacity. It's the same structure. We have our phalanges, which are the actual bones. We have 2 in the thumb and then 3 in the actual fingers. We got our 5 metacarpals in the hand. We have 8 carpal bones in the hand and only 7 in the foot. And obviously, we've had changes in this stuff over thousands or millions of years of evolution. But fundamentally, it's the same tissue, the same capacity. And so you'll notice all this stuff, like you playing football or doing stuff like that. You stub a finger, right? You break a finger, or you jam your thumb or something like that. We don't have problems with our toenail or our fingernails. We don't have problems with our fingers. We don't have like the stiffness. We get, carpal tunnel syndrome where this thing gets basically like you're holding your wrist in this kind of collapsed position way too much.
What he walks in on. Smelly walks in when you're sitting here like this.
Yeah. So you think about it, that's the only issue we have with this wrist. And so the wrist is like, okay, then we move that. Yeah, with the foot, we don't think about any of the fact that like all the issues we have are because we don't ever bend the toes. So you look at people who have messed up toenails, who get these Morton's neuromas, who get this incapacity or inability to move their toes. Therefore, you get a sprained toe, it turns into turf toe. Not because there's something wrong with your foot, but because you've not bent your toe in the last 3 to 5 years or 20 years. And so you start to think about it. It's like if I can't get blood flow to the tissues in and around my fingers, my fingernails, they would be messed up. If I can't do that for my toes, the same thing happens. And so then you get podiatrists that say, well, we need to measure you for a specially cut orthotic. We need to put you in pronation control shoes. We need to measure your gait. It's like, or you could just think that maybe my foot hasn't bent in forever. This guy was down with Ben Patrick, and one of the guys, he was at the gym. He's like, this kid could jump like nothing else. He jumped, and his eyes are at the rim level. It's insane. And you go look at it, and he's got these long tendons, these thin legs, and his very long tendons, very tendon-dominant athlete. But his knees bothering him. So he had when he first started going to the gym down there, like he had torn an ACL or something like that. His knee wouldn't bend all the way. And so they were working. He made big progress, just getting some blood flow to the knee. And I look at him like, well, you can't even – your feet and your ankles are so stiff. So I'm like, hey, come over here, take your shoes off. I grab his feet and I bend his toes, and every one of them is cracked. And they're not like the kind of like crack and pop like people have, but like the crack of like I have not bent that in a long time. He's like, I don't know the last time I've bent my toes. And I'm like, it is not exaggeration. So this is when we talk about ankle mobility. It's almost always based on how well your toes can bend, how well your knee can bend. It's nothing to do with the ankle. But I flex his toes, and they all crack. And I'm like, that's insane to me that we have a part on our body that we just do not move. So that's like if you have one hand. I think it was the lady in the water, the M. Night Shyamalan in a hand.
Yeah.
Where the guy is there's the guy sitting in the stairwell who only curled with one arm and is massive. Or you look at a tennis player. If you had one hand that you held in this kind of like squeeze your fingers together, and then the other hand where you moved into everything else, you're going to see a difference in the morphology and the actual muscle development and the actual neuromuscular control. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
And yet we don't think of that as an option for our feet.
Well, it's like if you put something in a cast or something, after a while it just becomes lame. It doesn't move anymore. Good,
and so this is one that I've been thinking more and more. Like I love people ask, I've got this Vibram 5 fingers. I wear them for everything. For running, I go like 10, 12, 13-mile hikes with them. I wear them at the airport. I walk around, people are like, oh, I love those shoes. They're so cool. And I'm like, it's crazy because the thing that people you flip out on is not that I wear shoes that show my toes, but it's that I wear toe socks underneath. Like, you wear toe socks? I'm like, yeah, but like what? I'm surprised people always think that's so weird. But
the toe socks are really comfortable.
So that's what I was going to say. I think at the very least, if you're listening to this, the single best thing you can do, even if you don't change anything else, get toe socks. Because what you see is, so for example, you put your shirt on and there's an itchy tag. You feel it for a while. That's called proprioception. So it's the physical feedback you get from wearing something physically touching you. And so eventually you don't feel that anymore because your body tones it out. So now you think about this is if I have my toes that have always been held together, they're in socks, they're in shoes, and when I take them off, like you forget what it's like to feel in between the digits. And so if you for putting toe socks on, I take these toes that are always held together and I put something in between them, a sock, and I put my fingers and kind of spread them out to get the toes in there because it's kind of awkward at first, as you probably have. I remember the first time I put them on, I was like 5 minutes late to work because I'm like, wait, I couldn't put them on. I was like, I had to sit down because this is the first day I wore my Vibrams too, and I was like trying to get my feet to go in the toe socks. I'm like, this is really, why can't I had to sit down and go one at a time? But just even that, the proprioception of like, oh, actually, they're different digits.
They're impossible to put on, Russell, just so you know.
It's a skill set. Mark Time, I think I got my shoes and socks on in 30 seconds or 27 seconds.
But once you do, he's right. Once you get used to it, it gets easier,
But just even as simple as that, as you walk around in shoes, if your feet feel something sliding in between them, you train them to turn back on. So if nothing else, just putting toe socks is a huge benefit. And then there's a whole level of stuff you can do sitting down.
Guys like Russell and I are...
What, handsome men? Great personalities,
we are very handsome.
Strong jawlines,
but
great hair.
We also have a lot of issues with a lot of this stuff. Like, for example, even me trying to lift my leg to put on my... Like, this is my good leg, too.
Yeah. Right.
To try to put my sock on in the morning is really tough.
Is it your left as well?
Well, this one's worse. I can
crossing my left leg.
It's crazy.
There's something wrong with the hip on that side.
Yeah,
and that's kind of what I want to ask you. A lot of people that watch this podcast, are either are past running. Mm-hmm. So how do you transition? Like something I've noticed in all of your videos is like you bring it down to a very low beginner's level. How do you at least, if you're going to give advice to before you can even become the barefoot sprinter, how do you become the barefoot runner?
You
Or
be the
barefoot
barefoot walker.
barefoot
Yeah.
walker.
And,
Yes,
and we
thank you.
and we did a little of this. Like I work with Graham out on the field, and that day you just had me running backwards. You're like, whoa! I tried to run forward, and you're like, that's kind of like you might get hurt there.
Yeah.
Like turn around, just run backwards because you can't go that fast, and it has other benefits. So
Yeah, absolutely.
Just tell us like where do people start at the minimum?
So, and this is one that's interesting. And obviously, this is me being somewhat contrarian, but like I always think it's the words matter. Sometimes it's semantic, sometimes it's not. But you say it's a very low beginner. It's like that's just a very human level. It's like, what does it look like to reclaim my human capacity? Right. And as part of a human capacity, being able to sit on the ground, being able to get up off the ground, being able to touch your feet, in different capacities. So if I can like put my socks on,
All impossible, by the way.
yeah, I know. So those are the things that it's like. The point of a barefoot sprinter is some of it's to show that I'm not holding anything. Like if I can go and sprint, I think of sprinting and jumping as the highest forms of athletic expression in some senses. Like if you can do a broad jump and you can triple broad jump and sprint, you can do the top. And that's kind of, you can do the top, you can do everything below that. So that's where I look and say, okay, this is just to show me as an example of like, if I was here and now I'm here, then you can do it too. But it's also understanding that I remember what it was like to be at those points where my hips are so tight, my knee, I could not even dream about touching my toes. Like getting my hands below my knees was like, that was good success.
I see Ben like jump over this 8-foot box, and I'm like, it's impressive. It's definitely high output, like elite athleticism, but I'm so disconnected from that movement.
But that's what's great about hearing his story too, is like that he wasn't an expert at it before. Ben wasn't an expert at it before he built that. It's just so hard for us to see that he built to that because you guys are at such a high level that we're like, how'd you build to that?
Right.
Geez.
What's the ground floor look
This
like
is an
for that?
interesting part too, where you look at the actual because on one hand, it's easy to sit there and complain, oh, these guys only put up this stuff. Yeah, well, if I put up the average stuff of me putting on my socks, you wouldn't watch it because it's boring. Right. So that's what you have to capture imagination with something that's like, that's why you look at Marvel and DC, all these superhero movies, they're superhumans. So they capture your imagination, but really the message is like, hey, just go do good things. Like whatever it is, like use your power. With great power comes great responsibility. I watched the Spider-Man one the way over. But the point is you start with simple things like, walking is the single most underrated thing we could do. Just walking, just getting on your feet, moving and doing that stuff is huge. And so, there's lots of stuff where at the beginning, because the thing is, you don't have to even wear shoes. Like if you just go out in the grass and walk around, like in a front yard, or find someplace that's safe and walk forward to backwards, you're going to start to get blood flow. One of the things that's hard, and this is the ubiquitous thing, people say, well, when I get up in the morning, it's really hard for me to put my socks on. Well, what else has happened in the morning? Nothing. You've been sleeping. Therefore, all the tissue, so we think about the skin, we think commonly about the body as there's skin, and then underneath that there's bones, and then there's muscle, and maybe some fat, and then maybe some tissue, like maybe some like veins and things like that. But in reality, there's this web called fascia that wraps around the entire body, every muscle cell, every ligament, tendon, bone, all the structures in our body. And that's also integrated with the skin. And so there's your dermis, and then there's layers of fascia. In between this layer of fascia, so like you could think of baklava in a sense, like this flaky layers of stuff. That's kind of what the dermis looks like. But in between that, I know, right? So if you've got tight calves,
my arm.
I know, yeah. I didn't, But if you look at these muscles, like someone's got very stiff and tight muscles, they almost always the skin is stiff on top of that, right? So like they can't get the skin to be loose and move off of that tissue underneath, and so that's where we're starting to get. What ends up happening, this is where things like cupping or massage or foam rolling or lacrosse ball, stuff like that can be helpful. Even just like touching and pressing in and trying to get some motion is essentially what you do is you activate and you get hyaluronic acid moving, and that's basically hydrating the tissue, the layers in between that. So they start to glide and slide easier. So part of this is just saying if you can get up in the morning and just even if you're not, even before you get out of bed, start to like pick your knee up, pick your legs up and get these things moving. Wiggle your toes around and start to move some of that. So what you want to think about, this analogy I always use is if, any of us had long hair, but if I had a ponytail, right? So what we want to think about is we think of this, it is one long connected structure. So if I pull at the end of the ponytail, it's going to hurt at the scalp. And so we think about this fascia, there are 12 major lines that run up the body. So there's 4 that go on the upper body alone, just on the arms. So like, I guess there's one on the superficial front, the deep front, and the superficial and deep on the back. So those are kind of like, if you stretch your arm out the side, you feel that big stretch from your fingertips all the way to your sternum. That's one, right? So there's a whole process there. But from your feet, the plantar fascia going up along your groin and your adductor. So from your feet to your pelvic floor, on the inside and the outside of your leg, on the front and the back of your leg. So you have a line that goes from the bottom of your big toe through your plantar fascia, up your calves, your hamstrings, your glutes, your back, your shoulders, your neck, your head, all the way to your eyebrows, your forehead. So if you look down around your back, it's all connected. So what we think about is if I'm feeling irritation at the scalp in this ponytail analogy, I could either, try to grow my hair longer or massage the scalp and do other stuff, or I could just stop pulling the tension on the other end. Basically, let go of the tension that's pulling on the hair. And so what you can start to think about is if you're feeling stiff in the morning, the first thing you do is not try to judge yourself, I can't squat, I might feel really stiff. That's okay. Let me start moving. And part of that movement is thinking, can I roll my ankles, do some ankle circles? Can I flex and extend my toes? Because what you see is when I pull at the very, very end of that fascial line, which that's where most of the lines for the body start at the feet. So if I start to pull and get some movement at the very bottom of this, that pulls and creates tension everywhere up the line. And so this is one of the things that I hear over and over again is the feet feel stronger, more alive. Running feels better. I feel springier. I feel bouncier. My hips open up. My back feels better. It's like all these things because basically what I'm doing is the common thread. I can either start pulling in the ponytail analogy. I can start messing and trying to braid the middle or like pull and try and create some space in the middle of the hair. Or I can just start to go back to the very, very beginning. So the simplest low-hanging fruit you could do is when you get up in the morning, start to move your toes before you even get up on the ground. Do some ankle circles, flex, extend your toes, move your fingers.
It's crazy that I just never even thought of that.
Yeah.
I've never thought about I'm still laying in bed, just move my, because a lot of times I'll get up and that first step is like a doozy because, some sort of arthritic, pain will hit me.
And what
before
that
I even get out of
arthritis
bed.
is, so this is a great analogy. In this compressive structure I mentioned earlier where we think of the body as like, a roof on top of the column, on top of the ground. So that's actually not how the body works. It's called this tensegrity unit, which is that everything is connected to everything else. And that if you press in on one of these models, everything gets compressed. If you expand, everything expands. And so fascia works like that. So if I pull on one area of the body, so if I straighten my arm and pull this out, for example, I can straighten my leg and then my ankle, if I bend my knee and I move my ankle up and down, that's one thing. But if I straighten my leg, my ankle moves up and down. If I stand up and put my head down, my ankle is a little bit different. So everything is pulled and connected. So what you could do is if you're really stiff, let me finish that thought, is that the arthritic component is when bones are on bones. Bones should never be touching one another. They should be suspended in this matrix of fluid and fascia. So if they're touching one another, it means that the fascia has gotten locked down and stiff. And so that one pressure somewhere is pulling everything else in. So the first thing you get up, you wake up in the morning, do some head circles. Actually I would just start with wrist and finger circles before you even move and become unhorizontal. Then you sit up, you turn, let your feet hang off the ground. Straighten your leg, you do some ankle circles, you point the toes, do some head circles, right? Then you stand up and do some hip circles. So you do the SpongeBob bringing around town where you stand up. And so at that point, now you've gotten blood flow to the major joints, the elbows, the wrist, the neck, the hips, the feet, the ankles. Because most people, their knees hurt and their elbows hurt a lot too. But they're not putting load on it first thing. So their knees are what feels stiff. So if I've gotten the feet and the hips to move, the knees as a byproduct start to get the tension that's pulling them in. So the fascia and this connective tissue is either locking everything down, which you feel at the knee, or it's not. And if it's not, then the first thing is your body isn't being compressed into this really awkward, uncomfortable position. And from there, it's like, okay, well, actually I have some freedom of movement. Now I can go start to move a little bit. And so you just start to think a little bit more actively. And so you get the shoulders move a little bit, get the fingers and hands going. You walk to the bathroom and then you're rolling. You can squat down if you need to go to the bathroom, whatever it looks like. That's how you do it. But you start off with this gentle movement. And then once you haven't created, because the other part of this is the narrative of pain we have in our head, which is, you have a story and it's evidenced by scars that your hips aren't healthy in a sense, right? But when you go, I've got bad hips, they're going to hurt. I already assume the pain. So, if someone that's like a dog that's been hit, for example, you go to raise your hand, it flinches. It's like, I was going for the cabinet and I wasn't even looking at you. We have this very strong neural drive where we associate things with that's going to hurt. Therefore, before it even has the chance to assess it as a fresh thing, if we've had pain for months, weeks, years, decades, we're just up, it's going to hurt. And so there's some part of that which you can't measure pain. It's all subjective.
And that goes into, I had this conversation with Mark. Every time I've done mushrooms, when I use psychedelics, I can squat down, I can move around, I can move all over the place. And I think it's because it gets rid of your inhibitions. Like it gets rid of that thought pattern that's holding you back. Not necessarily fixing you. It's like giving you a clean slate on like, it's not going to hurt when you squat down. Don't worry about it. You know, and then I can just squat right down. It's like, it's really weird what I can do on psychedelics, you know?
Yeah.
Like I'll take mushrooms and just like stretch out and stuff, and it's incredible. And so I think like as we move forward, and I'm not recommending people go out and do this, but I think it will be part of therapy, I think.
I hope so.
You know, in the near future.
So we take that 10-stack gradient model, which is that something that compresses the unit, compresses everything, something that expands. Now, one of the things that happens on mushrooms and psychedelics is an expansion of consciousness, right? To think of, I'm unencumbered, I'm enlightened, I take the things off, I unburden myself. So part of this is I focused on my breath. I realized that like I'm connected. There's a sense of connectedness to the world. And so this Sadhguru talks about this, which I think is the funniest name ever.
Sadhguru, I like that.
It's Sadhguru. He's phenomenally intelligent. He's a brilliant guy. But he talks about this idea of like, and again, it's not his idea. I don't know who owns ideas, but I heard it through him. But you know, we think of ourselves as these units that float autonomously through the world, right? And we don't think of like the air around us as part of ourselves. But if nothing changed, but the air was just gone, we'd be all dead in a few minutes, right? And so if the air that flows in and out of you, if you can't live without it, then it is part of you, right? So we become on mushrooms the ego, which is the story of us. We step away from that for just a moment. We get some space there. We shake up the snow globe, as it were. And we're able to perceive that our consciousness, our existence is broader than just our physical vessel, right? So the knowledge is shared, the dialogus between two, like conversation between two, a third thing can be known. So in that moment, we expand. And think about that. If I am expanding one part of the unit, everything else expands. So my body expands. I feel lighter. My muscles become less tense. I'm not holding as much tone. My tissues are able to spread. Literally, I become lighter. And so that's one of those things with our focus. What we attend to contracts or expands us. And so in our day-to-day life, when we get so focused on these things, my pain, my body, that's why I'm so passionate about helping people get out of pain, because you cannot think about it fundamentally. Like, get out of pain, make money, figure out who you are, use that money to build your future, use that knowledge and money to afford yourself a future, like build it out and then go manifest it. Like that to me is a 5-step plan for success. But fundamentally, none of that happens if you're in pain. If your hips hurt, if your neck hurts, if your back hurts, you throw your back out. The most central thing, you think about like if you step on something and your toe hurts, like you're limping around, you're reminded every single step. But most fundamentally, most viscerally, you throw your back out. Your life is just on pause. So if people are fragile, if their bodies don't work, if they're in pain, they have absolutely no capacity to think bigger and to be anything more than just, then they start to label themselves. I've got bad back. I've got bad knees. I've got bad eyes. And so you notice the language, good, bad, right, wrong. That's very fixed as opposed to I've got a weak back. I've got weak hips. And so that's part of the beauty of why I think it's so valuable to do things. Sports are, I think, an outcome that you can push people towards. But I think from a process metric, weightlifting, strength training, yoga, anything that's a discipline that forces you to use your body, forces you to realize that like, I don't have bad knees, just weak.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's why I think it's so damaging when you look at like the sense of arthritis. Sure, whether or not it's healable in a sense is second to the point that that's a symptom of the fact that your body's not working how it should. It's not like getting caught up in this like, oh, I've got arthritis. The doctor says the knees are there. I'm going to have a knee replacement. Like, oh, well, that's very damning. It's like, so here's the thing. I always tell people, they go, I've got this set of arthritis. The doctor says I can't fix it. And I'm like, okay, so let's play this out. You got two options. They're either right and you can't fix it and you're fucked. You have to have surgery. So might as well do whatever you can on the front end to see if it makes even a little bit better. And the very worst, it just makes the prehab better so that you recover better after surgery. Because if you have to have surgery, you're already fucked. It is what it is. Or maybe, just maybe, there's an opportunity for your body to recover and get stronger and to actually heal. And if that's the case, then what would that look like? Oh, wait, it's the exact same process you would look like after surgery. So why don't we try that? And if worst case scenario, you're fucked, you're fucked.
Yeah.
And that's what I look at and say, like, there's a message of hope we can talk to and say that the body, it goes to that fundamental belief of the body's not right, wrong, or good, bad. It's just, it's a growth spectrum as opposed to a fixed spectrum. It has the capacity to get stronger, the capacity to heal, the capacity to grow. Because, like, and this is where do you get that belief from? Well, why would it not be? Because up until, like I said earlier, up until a few people ago, that capacity, the person who could heal and recover, was going to outlive the person who didn't.
Yeah.
Because, like, you think about that.
It's really hard, because, like, so I've been dealing with this since I was a little kid. I've been in severe pain since I was a little kid. And there's only been a couple days in my life that I can ever remember feeling good, So it's hard to say, like, because I talked to you and you were like, hey, I think you have like a spiritual issue, like, because I do complain a lot. I'm like, oh, this hurts, that hurts. But it's hard because I wake up with this attitude where, like, today I'm going to go kill it. I'm going to get up, I'm going to go for a walk, I'm going to feel great.
Kill the day.
And I get, I get, 35 steps into my walk, and my feet and my calves and my ankles hurt so bad that it hurts to walk, and it's painful. And I end up cutting my walk short a lot and and that sort of ruins the mood for the rest of the day on anything else. So it's like, I do agree that there is a mental component and a spiritual component to it. But at the same time, there's like a physical component. So you have to sort of
You can pull the lever on both sides. And that's what I care about, which is if I go and say that to you, that means just as much about, like, as far as like, that means nothing in a sense. Like, other than opening up some conscious, why I don't spend too much time like going through that. Because so I think about this idea of like faith, love, and trust. So love there's a bunch of variables. These are my beliefs. So I don't know if it's right or wrong, or I don't know if it's correct. I don't know how far on the spectrum of correctness it is. So just to preface it with that, but I define love as seeing things clearly, right? If you love someone, love is continuing to show up, just making a decision and continue to show up, right?
Yeah.
And so part of that is to see something clearly, to see it for what it is, right? So to love someone is like, if I say I love you, it's because I see you for who you are. Not who I want you to be, not who I need you to be, not who I've heard you are, but for who you are, right? To feel loved is to feel seen.
Yeah.
Just one definition. Now, that's what we think about this is like, we start with trust. What does it mean to trust? Well, trust, what are things we trust, right? So there's like a trust, there's like a bank, which is like, okay, then my money's there, I know where it is. But like, I trust physical. So I trusted this chair. You can think about the definition of word based off of the vernacular and the situation, the lexicon of when it's used. And so I trusted this corner of sharp. I trusted this chair is going to support me. So trust starts from a very visceral physical environment. Do I trust my body first and foremost, that my fingers move, that if I go and touch my nose, do I trust that these things are repeatable and like dependable outcomes? Then I say, do I trust that if I've seen this before and this feels soft, it's going to be soft, right? If I touch that and my finger melted off, I'd be like, it would hurt, right? So that's pain is the fact that our internal sensations are not measuring up based off our external expectations, right? So that's why injuries are so debilitating in a sense. Something like a neuromuscular injury, like a brain, like I lost my sense of smell or my sense of my like eyesight or something like that, or I had a concussion. My memories, and so neurodegenerative diseases are so difficult because they train wreck and shipwreck our entire ability to trust our body. Because we can't trust ourselves. You look at babies, they're trying to figure out and look at things and they're developing. Can I stand up? Can I trust my feet are going to be there?
Yeah.
And that trust happens with first dominion over your body. So you're developing trust here. Once I have trust here, I can develop trust in external things. So I can develop trust in like relationships, in other people. And like you can have rock solid trust with Mark, for example, someone you've known forever. It's like because you have a certain amount of like as though you were with him, you would know him and feel him and see him clearly, right? So you have to love something in order to trust it. And so our bodies are the sum total of the experiences that have happened to us. Now, that can be emotional, it could be mental, it could be physical, it could be any number of things. But for many people, the thing that takes away, so if you think of like the injuries, take away that foundational level ability to trust our bodies, right? So for me, and I talked about this earlier with the shoulder.
Yeah.
I dislocated my shoulders. I lost a foundational component of my ability to trust. So I wouldn't straighten my arm out. I wouldn't roll.
Don't trust it. Yeah.
Exactly.
It might pop out again.
And then when I lose that causes pain. So the pain of like, I can't trust this. So the pain of it could be a mental, emotional, psychological, whatever, or physical pain, like, oh, I'm losing that, right?
But you trust it now, right?
That's the hard part.
And
so
how'd you get there?
That's it. So I have to, in order to trust it now, I have to love, meaning to see clearly how I got to where I am. Because I can, if I don't see, meaning if I don't look and say, what are the circumstances that happen? I can't undo those. I can't fix those. I can't correct for those. Meaning, okay, I was only training, doing a bunch of bench press, not doing anything for the shoulder and health of that stuff. I wasn't, whatever it is, or my feet, or like, if I don't see my past clearly, and this is where I think that your body holds on to certain key memories in a sense. So like memories that you'll have like landmark for whatever reason they stick around. I think those, because I've always said I have a bad memory just as like a label, right?
Yeah.
But that's just because there's only a handful of things I would remember. And that could be like the time for me when I was left at a daycare center and my parents were late or something like that. Or maybe you give the feeling that like I'm not worthy if I don't show up and I'm perfect or whatever it is. There are certain things that stick out to you as foundational memories of like, your body says this is important and we're not going past that. So it could be for any number of reasons. It could be like the thing that happened to you emotionally as a kid that kind of set the standard. And then they can set any number of things, like the actions you take that led to the injuries you have. It really doesn't matter because the physiology and the psychology all intermesh. The point being, it's very easier for me to walk through someone saying, okay, your knee hurts. Well, let's talk about it. How far did you have a previous injury? Did you get surgery? What shoes do you wear? So I basically understand so I can love you better to see you. And then I build in the history and say, okay, let's try these things. And then in that sense, it's much easier for me to go and fix that because that allows you to build up trust in your body again. Once you have trust, then you can start to develop trust in the intangible things like the psychological, the emotional, the spiritual, so to speak. And that can be something you develop in, let's say, other things. It could be psychedelics, coaching, journaling, working that. So that's where you start there. So, but that requires faith, which is trust in a future, or love in a future self, or some. I forget. There's a better way of saying it.
I keep trying to think of that. Like, just see the finish line. Look at these other people; they've done it. Like, try to see that.
But are you comparing yourself to them as opposed to loving where you came from and your past? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So one of the things that I've noticed, just if I may, I would not know who Mark Bell if it wasn't for you. I wouldn't know any of this stuff. And it's funny that like 12 years ago, I'm watching Bigger, Stronger, Faster as a teenager and stuff.
And now we're sitting here talking.
But my point though is that you have an incredible skill set and you are incredibly creative, you're talented, you are intelligent, you have made some of the most foundational things, and whether or not you get the credit for certain things, like you've been part of instrumentally putting things on the radar for other people.
Yeah.
Yet I don't perceive you to be someone that acknowledges your own like that contribution in a sense. And I could see it being potentially a middle child in some sense where, from the story of Mad Dog being such a big guy doing this stuff and taking so many things, and Mark doing, just his own thing. It's like in some sense, like, where's the credit? Like, I'm out here doing just as much as these guys, but no one acknowledges me. And that can create a defensiveness. And so when you go walk, your body you're hypersensitive to the pain. And so you get that. And then it turns into snowballing of like, well, last time I didn't pay attention to this, it went this, this, and this. And there's a snowballing assumption. And that's where it's difficult because that psychological thing creates a very protective mechanism, a sympathetic drive, which is when I do some body work on you, or we go, you hold your breath, you tighten down, you lock down as hard as you can.
Yeah, I think also people don't realize in creating the films that I did, 99% of my life is rejection. Yeah. 99% of my life, even like, every day I'm taking phone calls from producers. No. Amazon said no. Netflix said no. Discovery said no. But, he's been in here on some of the pitches. They've been fucking fantastic. They've been off the charts. Like, I blow these people away, and they sit there going, "Oh my God, do you have any questions?" No, you answered everything to me. Like, okay, great, we're gonna nail this one, and then it's no, sorry, you can't do it. So I think that like the rejection gets you used to losing. I hate to say that, but it gets you used to. Like one of my producers will call me and she'll say, "You did so amazing. Like, we're gonna nail." I go, "No, they're gonna say no," and she's like, "Why?" I'm like, "Because they always do." Like, that's just how it goes. And then anytime I've actually made a movie, guess how I made it? By myself. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like I went out and just raised the money and went and made it. And then the same people that told me no came back and bought it.
Yeah. So there's two lessons
It's crazy.
here.
It's like,
one of which is you get to say, I'm not valued in the world. No one sees this. If you take their external lack of validation or lack thereof and allow that to be the defining story of your life, you would be someone that quit and did other things. But you could also look and say that you're one of the most resilient humans on the earth because you can get told 90, like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, you get told no all the time and just keep coming back.
And that's a skill set. But the thing is, you can either allow yourself, like, I can either trust my internal strength and say, fuck, I am one of the most resilient humans ever. Like, this is fucking crazy. And every time they say no, good. Because it wasn't the right thing. You didn't appreciate it. You didn't see the value. And it's another rep for me to get stronger. Or you can say, fuck, maybe they are right. Maybe I don't have any value. So it's all is the perception of how we live it. And so the way I see for you, even though this is what you're an interesting person because you still show there's a part of you that still believes, that still has love, still has hope and faith, and wants to give. You have a big heart of love that's there because you keep showing up. But your body tells me that there's a whole different level of like you're expecting the next punch, the shoe to drop in that sense. And so those two become conflicting pieces internally that create pain in the body. Because I want to do this stuff, therefore I go and do this, but my body, like, I'm afraid. So that fear and the love conflict one another. And you can either be, and that's when it's like when you go on mushrooms, you aren't able to hold conflict in a sense. I think that's when you expand it, you're able to you have to submit in a sense, and you have to just let it go. And so that's where you feel so open. It's not fundamentally something different changes to your body. Your attention may be a little different, but I think fundamentally it allows us to say, this is what I could feel like if I could fully just commit. And I think that's the power.
Yeah, I think I've realized it's not really the substance. I have this in me.
Absolutely.
This is in me.
The more trips I've done, the more I feel like my life is a trip in a sense.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like I have this in me. I need to learn how to bring it out when I'm not taking these mushrooms.
And that's the thing is, so I would flip that around is you don't have to learn how to do it. You have to unlearn how to go to a defensive mechanism.
Yeah.
And some of those things, and that's where you go back to the body. Which
you told me too, like your shoulder that's messed up, like my shoulder, that I hold it, like I'm holding everything. And I can even see that and feel that.
Yeah.
I feel a lot of times I'm like gritting my teeth.
Yeah.
Like I'm a tense person and I need to relax.
Get hit all the time.
Yeah. And it's hard. It's like, how do you
think about the three things you said? I'm a tense person. I need to relax. You labeled yourself and then you said what you need to do. And so just as I have a tendency to go to a protective safety mechanism of holding on to tension because that's what my body feels safe doing, and it's doing it to try and protect me. So you can bring love and compassion to that. So that we can talk about there is. We'll come back to the circle in a second. And the other side is I need to relax. Is giving my body a command saying that what you're doing is wrong. You need to do something different. Basically, you're like a little kid that's like, I'm scared. It's like you need to not be scared. Like that doesn't work. So
yeah.
The two parts that the language you use matter, and not so much that you can partly hack these physiology by understanding the language, but it is a tell in the sense how you talk about yourself. But what you want to think is it's easy to get caught up because people will say, there are easy ways to speak in what I call. So growing up, for me, it was more of a Southern Baptist Christian in some senses, and I've taken what I hope to say is I've taken the better parts of the faith and the spiritual side of that and let go of the religious parts. But again, that's my belief. It's subjective. I don't know. I can't say for sure. But what I would say, there's people that use, I call it Christianese. I'm saved. The grace of everything. It's like, what does that mean? Speak in real language. Because what does those because these words have meaning. And when people go and they say we have a shared vernacular about how we talk about stuff, but it's like, oh, I got tension. Like, let's say you're going to talk to Mark or any of the powerlifting guys come in. You got tension there. Do you feel your muscles? Feel the lat engage? It's like, wait, do I feel tension in my lat? What's a lat? You see how you skip over this foundational piece of what is this? What is this supposed to be? It makes sense? You skip this, the education because we're all there. And that's good. You can do that because that allows you to get to a higher level. But it's never to forget that these words actually have meaning, right? So tension, lats, these are things. So always how would I explain this to someone that is actually new? Because then let me make sure that I'm actually not hijacking this word to mean something it's not. So that's the point of when you look at things like gratitude, which is gratitude is the ability to expand and to channel gratitude. It's let me find it's a centering moment in this because in order to be grateful, I have to see things for what they are. I'm grateful that I can talk. I'm grateful that we have this conversation. I'm grateful that you are an intelligent man that's has these skills, and I'm grateful that Russell's over there looking beautiful and is managing all this stuff. And it's to be grateful is not to make up some fancy thing. It's to truly be grateful is to say, actually, I'm not it's hot in here and I can't believe this. It's that's me seeing a lack of something because I'm not seeing things from a bigger perspective, right? A little kid gets it rains on their, I don't know, they drop their ice cream. It's yeah, but you had ice cream. It's and it's not to poo-poo any emotions, but it's to see things clearly from a bigger perspective. That's gratitude. But there's all kinds of things like hope. You look at bliss, enlightenment, love, faith, and then you go to the other side, fear, jealousy, there's shame, blame, denial. These are all words that have meanings, but they also actually correlate to our physical state of our body. So are we holding on to tension? Are we holding on to pain, holding on to problems? And those, you can test somebody's calibration for the muscle, say, how well are you doing it? So for you, there's a lot of defensive and fear and anger, which is, we can walk, it's power versus, if you're interested and you want to look this up, power versus force.
And you know what I noticed, and we're going to have to go in a minute, I think, right, Russell? Yeah. But what I noticed is that what I don't like is the pain turns me into somebody that I'm not, and I can feel that, and I hate that.
Now, this is
Like,
where the
I
archetype
really
of
dislike
Hulk
that.
Hogan. Like, no, Hulk, what's Bruce Banner? The Hulk?
The Hulk, Incredible Hulk.
So this is where you start to look at this fascinating because these are other superheroes, but they're superheroes to Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It's like you have both those capacities, but it really this is the beautiful thing of these Marvel stories, these comics of like they actually tell an archetype of something that relates to us, which is why we go there. And so that Hulk of like
You wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what you see is like, oh, you, and then if I say, hey, I love you, I appreciate you, and I say all this nice stuff, like part of you wants to believe it. The other part is like, yeah, but you don't really know me.
Yeah.
And that's the defensive part because it's like, yeah, but what if I do really know you and I still love you?
Yeah.
And that's like, I can't accept that. And that's where people have a hard time with that because it's very conflicting for the way you've just learned to operate. It's tough. And that's where like
I just think like even like I'll be in pain, like just physical pain, flipping through Instagram and things will trigger me. Like from somebody I like and I'm friends with and I follow. Like maybe I'll see your post and be like, Graham doesn't know what he's talking about.
Of course not.
And then I go,
Yeah.
why am I acting like this?
You judge yourself?
Because I'm in pain, no, too.
Exactly.
Like because
and you're contracted. And
I'm
it makes
like
you think you
turning
can't.
it into something else and something dirty. And it's great to notice that though, because then you can like reverse out of
That's
it.
the classic though. Your superpowers. You're creative. You have a very fast mind. You're very fast thinker. You know, I'm sensitive, right? People are always trying to label my sensitivity as a flaw. My sensitivity gives me the ability to perceive things in other people that they wouldn't otherwise notice, the ability to have compassion for a man or woman that most people don't notice. Like, you have so many superpowers. It's up to your consciousness are you going to be a superhero or a supervillain?
Yeah.
Right. And you have, and they both, the duality of man lives within inside of all of us, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we just have to put our focus to take our God-given strengths, which you and your brothers have had many, and that's why you guys have made such an impact on the world around you. But I don't want to discredit what you deal with pain. This last 6 months or so, pain is, it's a paradigm shifter. It is an absolute paradigm shifter.
It's a teacher.
But how you're saying to go through and sort of work it out of you.
Yeah.
Just to
whenever
pay
possible.
attention. Yeah, that's beautiful what you just said there, and it's really really true to a deep core. And to wrap this up, just as like a takeaway for like why this is valuable, it's like it's easy to just dismiss this stuff as like, oh yeah, that's up there because someone listened. And if you're in pain and you're feeling this, you're like, well, that's stupid. I wouldn't even bother. But it just is as simple as starting to, and this is what I think if I were to pick these apart for you, both of you, when you can label it, it means you're attending to it. You pay attention to it. Notice the words you speak. Then you can start to just observe yourself for a while. Don't judge, just like observe. And then if you do judge, just observe that you judge. Like, that's interesting. And if you could just start to say like of yourself, if Russell flipped off and flipped out, ran out, this is stupid, you can either react and say, what are you doing? I can't believe it. Aren't you grateful? And get mad at him. Or you can respond saying, that's interesting. I wonder what's going on.
Yeah.
That response gives you power.
I also think that a superpower is having pain. Like, honestly, like the amount of people that I've helped get off of drugs, the amount of people that I've helped get out of pain, the amount of people I've helped lose weight, all these things, it's really because I was in pain.
You understand
and I had to
that.
figure out ways to get around it. And then also, like, have compassion for them. Like, I'm not going to...
You can empathize for them. This is when people mess up sympathy versus empathy. Empathy is like you empath. I am in your situation. If I've never been in your situation, I can have sympathy. I can have compassion, which is like I can understand intellectually that sucks. I can have sympathy and say, I feel for you, but I can't empathize. And people that have been through these situations, like for it to be overweight, to lose that, you can empathize with people and all the things that you don't get. You can empathize with people in that pain. And that's where it's like pain doesn't have to be, we don't like it, therefore we think it's a bad thing. But pain is a teacher. Yeah. And eventually you get to the point where when you learn the lesson it's teaching you, then you can transcend to doing things for pleasure and creating, and that's where your greatest ideas will come.
One last thing before you go. Like, you're one of the only people that have come here, besides like Stan Efferding, for like a month, like spent time here with Mark. And I was just wondering if you learned anything or picked up anything from being around us or Mark or whatever.
Oh my God, it's every day is I'll say just from all the things I would have picked up, like each of you have something interesting and unique that I'm learning from him specifically. There's a certain level of when people think about people that are very successful, they think, oh, they probably have a morning routine, they have all the stuff down. It's like watching him around his family, like in just the way he orients himself with kids and chaos. And we were at the house, the beach house, and it was like a bunch of kids, a bunch of relatives. Just that ability to just go with the flow of the ocean, like to maintain your identity in the face of other people, but then just to not get caught up and react. It's like something that is a slight aloof disconnectedness of like, I'm not going to just get overly involved and take ownership of this stuff. Also, I'm not going to worry about that stuff because it doesn't serve me well. But just for him, it's focusing on what's actually important, right? So does that make sense? Like from him, like just does it really matter? And so basically to take what's important and to let go of the rest of it, if it doesn't really matter, it's not worth thinking and caring about. From you, what I've noticed is there's a certain level of, you do a really good job without thinking about it is like how to take this and then what if I pull back the constraints on this thing? Every single thing I teach you and like you have your bullshit filter and you kind of like take it, let me think on it, sit on it. But then it's like you do it and you're always playing with ideas. You're always like, yeah, but what if we did it like this way? And that's why you're so creative because you can see things and just like immediately take them and then rotate it just a slight different twist, and then you get something that most people don't see.
Yeah.
And the other side
it's not always better. And if it's not better, then you go back to the original.
But the fact is that it was a thought.
You tried it, yeah.
Yes, and eventually it's the whole like entrepreurial efforts rarely succeed, but entrepreneurs themselves rarely fail. The other thing I've seen from you that I think is beautiful is that when you see people that come in, just like everyday Joes that no one else would really care much to come in the store, ask a question. Like you will literally pour like anybody that is even slightly open and perceptive to like learning. You're just like, fuck, I'm going to walk you. And you have such a strong desire to help and to grow. And I think so much of that
they
is
walk in looking for a slingshot and they leave with a full diet plan and like everything.
But part of it, I think we treat people how we want to be treated in some sense. And so part of you desperately wants to be loved and appreciated and someone to look at you and say, I see the light and the value in you. You can fucking do this. Therefore, you pour that into other people so much. But then you ironically don't.
I also try to teach people it's easy to be nice.
Exactly.
It's really easy to be nice to people.
And that's so ironically, you do that to yourself though. Yeah. Like that's ironic, the whole Jesus thing. Love others, love others as we love ourselves. Like love yourself, love one another, love yourself. In a sense, we end up loving others as we wish we could love ourselves. But it's like ironically that ends up making us resentful because we end up going from an empty tank. But it's like what I would find that you have the capacity for immense love, immense attention, immense teaching, immense coaching, and it's beautiful. I just would love to see you just turn that to yourself and bring that very strong, like, buddy, you're doing fucking amazing.
Yeah, and you're doing amazing too, and we love having you here.
Well, thank you.
So before we run out of here, tell us where everybody can find you.
So let's say the main places, TikTok, Instagram are at the Barefoot Sprinter. And then I've got a podcast and YouTube. So that is going to be a more serious focus afterwards. But that'll be it's Graham Tuttle, GrahamTuttle. And the main thing, if I can encourage you to do anything, I do a course at the beginning of every month. It's a month-long thing to fix your feet, ankles, lower legs, everything from the pelvic floor down. It's called Ready to Run. It's not about running. It's just about restoring your feet so you can walk, you can touch your toes, put your socks on. That's like the one call to action if you could do that. Not because I'm trying to make money, but because I think it's so valuable to restore your feet, and it's helping a lot of people, and I want to get people back to their life. So
let's do it. All right, buddy. Thank you.
Perfect.
Boom. That was awesome. It was more of a psychology, like a therapy session.
Graham the philosopher.